Hello, Outfest family.
Hello to our Outfest audience.
What's going on, girlfriend?
Hey there, baby, I'm a survivor. Don't take no shortcuts when I'm the driver. Hey there, baby, I'm a survivor. Don't take no shortcuts when I'm the driver.
I need to channel something like that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for watching our digital festival.
Whoa, it's just so great.
Hello and welcome to Los Angeles 2020. My name is Brendan Lucas, the project manager for the Outfest UCLA Legacy Project, and I am thrilled and honored to welcome you to this live stream conversation and Q&A for our Legacy section virtual screening of Lily Tomlin, the film behind the show from 1986, directed by Joan Churchill. So we are in day 6 of our 10-day virtual festival, and I just wanted to say thank you for those of you who are watching safely at home. And tonight I am joined by 3 incredible women, each of whose distinctive talents and crafts were indispensable to making this remarkable portrait possible. So I want to please welcome the subjects of Lily Tomlin, the film behind the show. We have with us Lily Tomlin and Jane Wagner, and we are joined by the film's director, cinematographer, and documentarian Joan Churchill.
Hi.
Hi, Lily.
Hi. Jane excuses herself for a moment.
That's perfect.
Maybe hear her hairdryer going.
No worries. And welcome, Joan.
Upstairs, but Jane will be here soon.
Oh, not at all. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight to talk about the film, which captures a really interesting and particular moment in your careers as well as in your lives. And so we just want to thank you for allowing us to screen it as part of the festival.
No, I'm so happy that you did.
So I'm curious just to, if you could take us a little bit back to when the pieces that became part of this documentary and ultimately the search for signs of intelligent life in the universe, when did the writing sort of begin on this project? Because it's so central to this film.
You're talking about the writing for the search itself?
That's a great question.
For the documentary, there was no writing for the documentary, was there, Joan?
No.
For the search,
I.
yeah, sorry.
But go ahead.
Oh,
Brendan, your question?
Yeah, I'm curious about what the writing for the performance itself. When did those pieces sort of start to generate?
Well, should I answer that, Joan? I don't know if I'm understanding. But the pieces for the search were written cumulatively. They came to fruition sort of in sometime in the fall of '85. And so we took it out on the road immediately. And we went to Broadway September of the next year. No, of 85. Of 84. Then we opened on Broadway almost a year later in '85. I think that's answering your question.
Sure. Well, I'm kind of curious. Yeah, what was it like touring around the country? Because you embarked on this process of really workshopping and testing pieces, which is a really vulnerable process. What was that like touring around? Because you went to different cities.
Well, yeah, it was okay. It was great. I was used to doing it anyway because I toured all the time, and we had with us just our stage manager and our sound person, and sort of I can't remember. We had 3 or 4 people with us in our crew, and we would do everything. We would drive down to San Diego with equipment up on the roof of the car, and we'd leaflet in the streets, Lily doing new material, and we had flyers that said no props, no costumes, no actors.
Which was probably wise.
Yeah, it was very wise. And so I just did stuff like that over and over and over again. And then as the show got closer and closer to being put together, in January, we started going out and booking theaters, small theaters. And the first one we booked was in Santa Fe at the Lyric Theater. And many people used to vacation there in the winter, but all of Nixon's people, a lot of Nixon's guys were there before they went to, was that before they went to jail or after? Must have been after. I can't remember, but a lot of them were there. And so they got to witness the search, I'm sure, because people had nothing else to do. And they would come on the weekends and they would see the show 2 or 3 times. And we were there for 2 weeks. And a great thing happened while we were there. The very rich lady, Kate, had found a suicide note on the street near where she exercises. And she's telling, you see her in the first act where she's had a horrible haircut, a very trendy haircut, cut up above, kind of sassoon above one ear and down this side, and very geometric and chopped. And she was just brutally mortified because, and she says to someone in the beauty shop to whom she's sitting next to, she says, I saw people in the street actually staring at my haircut. And so she just thought that was the worst thing that could happen to anybody of any stature, is to be looked at and to be sort of an object of amazement or ridicule or scorn or whatever it is. And in the end, she reveals this suicide note to her friend. It's the most moving part of the play, and every night I would just be overwhelmed with joy and sorrow, and it would be about the bag lady. There are 12 characters in the play that I personify, and it's meant to tie everyone together. As one, humanity is in one person, or we're all one. And the bag lady on the street, Trudy, she calls the woman and she says she has an umbrella hat on. She wears an umbrella hat that she can't. This is getting very confusing. I can see your face. She has an umbrella hat that she can signal, all kinds of other people into her realm. And so she hands the umbrella hat to Kate and says, because it's rain, and she says, your hair's beginning to shrink on one side. And Kate laughs about that. Absolutely. Did they follow that, Joan, do you think? I hope they did. If they didn't, it's probably their misfortune, because I doubt I'll perform the play again, but maybe someone else will.
You should.
Yeah. Joan, I'm kind of curious about the process of meeting Lily and Jane and sort of working with them behind the scenes. What was that like, and at what point of the process did you come in?
Well, I had done a series of films about institutions and hadn't had a lot of fun doing it, and was looking for something to do that would make me smile. And I went to a birthday party for Beatrice Wood, who was 85, and she was the darling of the Dadaist movement. And Lily was there as a guest and a speaker, and she was dressed as Dali, D-A-L-I, Parton. So she had enormous boobs in a big sort of shoebox and a Dali mustache. Amazing. And I was just like, oh my God, this is it. And we happened to have a commonality. My mother's best friend was a doctor, crazy woman named Elsie Georgie, who I think was Lily and Jane's doctor as well. So she put us together. And I tell you, mostly I was dealing with Lily, and Lily was very, very, very reluctant to have a film made. And I was really interested in the creative process and what happened, what they went through to do this. And it took a long time. I went on the road with them for months before they agreed. to let us start filming. And then we just started and stuck with it for months and months.
One thing that I think the film does really beautifully and is such a fascinating look is that you filmed the feedback sessions that would happen in the different venues in the different cities across the country, which I haven't really seen in many other shows other than for, promotional materials like, oh, this was a great play. But people were pretty frank, at least as what you included in the film. And it seemed novel to me. I mean, this may happen all the time, but I guess, Lily, was that something that was a regular part of your performing practice? Was that something you usually subjected your live works to before?
Well, if we were working on a new show, yes, we always had audience feedback. I was very, I had a very good relationship with my audience. It was a lot of hanging out and a lot of when we'd hit a town, we used to make we had a sealer meal traveled with us, and we would take a plastic bag and put like a flower from a bouquet I had backstage and a battery from my mic and a lipstick tissue that I blotted my lips on and some other little paraphernalia. And then we always had a card that said, "This is a genuine celebrity artifact." My name. And then we'd get some local charity, usually a gay charity, and we'd let them have the money for the little bags that people would buy. And they knew they were giving to the charity, so they were easy marks.
That's so wonderful.
We'd raise a fairly good sum
That's great.
for them. But anyway, so we just had that kind of relationship going anyway. We'd always done that. And so it was very natural for us to have feedback. And especially because the play was largely a feminist piece. And so there were, you see in one of the feedbacks, one of the guy, he didn't know what a consciousness raising session was. Yeah. And at that time, Post-its were almost unknown. They had barely hit the market. And my own, one of the executives that, a few years later, we didn't even film that play until later. And we opened in 85 and we filmed it in 91. And Steve Hewitt at CBS, who was a big executive at CBS, he said, "Don't call them Post-its. People won't know what you're talking about. Maybe call them stickums or something." Well, it was ridiculous. We couldn't possibly do that. And so that was that kind of thing always. You wanted to find out what you were communicating and what you weren't.
Right. That was a scene that stuck with me too, because it seemed like, one or two of like the male audience members who's profiled in the talkback session was just kind of confused by something that, women of the era who were politically active or politically conscious would have known what consciousness raising was. And that got me to thinking about whether that was something that, if that was something that Jane and Lily had experienced firsthand. I mean, were you very kind of involved in hi, welcome, Jane. We were just talking about consciousness raising sessions. And I was wondering how autobiographical that was, or if that was more fiction.
Wait, I missed that last part.
I guess I run the risk of confusing fiction and autobiography. So I was hoping to get kind of a glimpse of kind of the feminist world that gets profiled in really like the middle of the film. Was that something? Did you have really firsthand experiences with kind of consciousness raising, radical feminism, and some of like the lesbian consciousness that was happening at the time? What was that like?
Well, what was it like for you? Maybe he's asking.
No, I'm just I always knew what it was. Everything was. I didn't have to like go to consciousness raising.
Well, I did.
Did you?
Kind of for research, yes. And I just remember that somebody was going to disrobe because you were supposed to show your genitalia, and also my consciousness wasn't raised exactly. But it gave me confidence to write the piece about consciousness raising for some reason. It did.
Sometimes theory and practice don't always align, but the Lynn and the Edie and Marge segment is just such a really an emotionally moving part of the final play.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful. And I was curious about the times that it came out of.
Well, all those things were of that time.
Sure.
Yeah, I love that you're a man and that you're, kind of honing in on this. This is great. So it worked for you as somebody who wasn't a feminist exactly, but.
No, I mean, I think that's what's fascinating for someone like a man and watching it with remove. And I think that's why I'm glad that we're able to see it, is because it kind of, in some ways it caricatures, but it really captures the time and some of the things that women were going through before now really beautifully and explores both like the serious side, but the funny aspects as well. One thing I noted in watching the film again, I wanted to ask you about the contribution of Peggy Feury to the film, because it's dedicated in her honor. And there's some wonderful scenes where you are workshopping some of the characters and the writing with her. So could you tell us a little bit about her contribution to your practice and the film itself?
Well,
You must be an actor to know.
No, but she gives some really great advice in the film that I think would be hard to take, but is fascinating to watch.
I don't remember. I know
We should have watched this before this.
Well, I did. I mean, I watched it a while back, but
what was it like working with Peggy?
well, what was? Oh, well, it's wonderful. I mean,
As good as me.
well,
I love Peggy
Peggy's
too.
a little more patient.
Yes.
That's
Well,
an important part.
everybody who worked with Peggy, she was from the studio.
Sean Penn was a student.
Many people studied with her, and she set up the studio here in California from New York, and then I met her. She played my doctor on All of Me, the movie with Steve, and I just fell in love with her, and we became great friends, and I started studying with her right away. And I would go to her class, and I would do part of my monologue that I was working on from the play in the class. And that's when we just had a long relationship, and it was very painfully horrible. She died during the run on New York. Yeah. Joan called me and told me, in fact.
Yeah.
Well, we were roommates on the road.
Oh, really?
It was, it was a shoestring production.
She would come around she came on the road with us a few times.
Yeah.
To see the play, the progress of it. She gave me tremendous confidence. No more confidence than you did, sweetheart. Just by writing it, but Peggy was more, really.
You don't have to compare us. She was a wonderful teacher.
Yeah, she was.
And I was thinking of Joan when you said that, I don't know how you got this done, because where was the money coming from?
Our pockets? Well, we had,
I don't know how you did.
I think we had a grant from Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the National Endowment for the Arts and Channel 4 in England. So,
Joan, I'm curious about how the process of restoring this film and sort of who is involved in creating this new transfer and helping reintroduce this film to audiences.
oh man, it was a very long process, and the British Film Institute has fortunately all the elements, and but the film was out of sync. The soundtrack didn't sync up with the picture initially. Anyway, we had to keep going back and back and back. And this is the first time the 16:9 version of the film, widescreen, has been shown. The other times it's been the more of the square 4:3. But yeah, no, they did a fabulous job. It's just, I was astounded.
The restoration is beautiful. I think it really shows the cinematography. And in the film, it uses scenes from Lily's career, like the 1975 television special, and there's a kinescope from when you appeared on Merv Griffin. I think maybe the first time you were on Merv Griffin. So it's
It was.
oh, yeah. Do you collect all of your appearances? Are you a film collector?
No, I mean, I did. I had an eye to always kind of. After a while, I couldn't keep everything collected.
Right.
But in the beginning, I was unknown at that time, and you could only get the copy of the material on Kinescope, and I would get paid something like $2.65 for the show, and I would use the money to buy the Kinescope. But I shouldn't have wasted my money, because pretty soon it was on YouTube. I mean, 20 or 30 years later,
But
I don't.
someone had to save it, right?
Yeah, I guess. But I kept, and of course we did specials together. Jane and I did 7 or 8 specials together, and so we have all that film. It's probably deteriorating in the vault right now.
Well, if it's film, it's probably
Well, it's
better.
not film. We dubbed it. The last we dubbed it was to D2.
Oh.
I don't know if that was good enough. We've got someone else consulting with us, and they're telling us we've got to do something else.
Yep.
That's great. And speaking of sort of retrospective of your work, there was the series Two Free Women that happens at the for Film at Lincoln Center it's coming up on a year now, so back in 2019. What was it like to kind of look back at your films? Did you see many of the films, and were you play anything?
I saw a few. I don't remember what we saw.
Well,
Did we see all of me? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think
We
did.
saw The Search.
Mm-hmm.
We hadn't seen that in a while. That was fun to see. Did we see Late Show?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember which shows we
Did
saw.
you Incredible Shrinking Woman? Did you rewatch that? That was another film that was written by Jane, right?
Which film was it?
Oh, Incredible Shrinking Woman.
Oh, Incredible Shrinking. Yes, Incredible Shrinking. That's Jane. Jane wrote that script.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
can't
that was
remember,
fun.
but we were very honored and very pleased and excited to be acknowledged in that way by Lincoln Center and by
It was a packed house, full, absolutely
Oh.
jam full.
Yeah.
And Jane, if you saw the film, Jane is talking. She's got the mic here, and she lets it just drop. No one can hear her, and the moderator Hilton Ailes and I both had to keep.
Well, when I got laughing from it, I just kept it on. But I wasn't that good an interview.
Oh, you were.
Oh, it was great.
It was
You
great.
know what you thought, John?
It was
You
fabulous.
can see the conversation that they had online. And speaking of voices, I mean, Lily, you've created so many incredible characters with distinctive voices over the years. I'm kind of curious. When did you discover that you could do voices? And
I don't think I discovered it. I think I don't know how I got started. I think I was in pre-med in high school, and then in college, and not in high school. When I went to college, I signed up for pre-med, which was totally ridiculous. I mean,
And dangerous.
that too. So I got into a college show.
Didn't you do?
I did
The French.
Board. Which
Oh,
one?
I thought you did a French farce,
Oh, I did. I did a play. I was in
Madame.
Mademoiselle Chillon, and I played a big part. But that was because my girlfriend that I was in a zoology class with, she was voted prettiest girl when we went to high school, and she could be very imperious, or she could be like Snow White's. She could be like, I used to do a bit on her, and she'd say she was like Snow White's stepmother, and like a cross between Susie Sorority. And so she would be very imperious when she was Snow White's stepmother. And so one day she says, I was throwing my compass into my lab table, chipping up wood. You know, that's how serious I was about being a doctor. And I just abhor mindless vandalism. and I was just flattened for a minute. And then she said, I'm going over to the Bonstelle to read for Mad Woman of Chaillot. You should come along. There are a lot of small parts.
God.
And so I did go, and I put my name in. You had to fill out a paper, and I put it in. And every time they'd call me, I'd be out of the room. I was so nervous. I didn't have any idea what to, even though I had put on shows all my life as a kid. But that I thought was kids' play. I didn't know people did that to make a living. And, so finally, I got to walk. They were desperate for people. They have a big cast, and they called me, and if I asked if I'd do a walk-on as one of the cafe patrons. And then I got the signal honor of playing one of the capitalist women who gets banished to the Mad Woman's cellar into the netherworld. And I would lead these other two actresses, I'd lead them down this big spiral staircase, and I'd just improvise going down the whole time. And they would just like, oh, everybody would run out. And Iris Gorin, if you're out there, please contact me. I never forgot Iris Gorin in my whole life. She was so intense, and she was a drama student. And she would say to me, do you know what kind of concentration you have? And of course, I had no idea what she was talking about. Mm-hmm. And then I left there, but I was such a big hit in that play that I feel like I'm doing a big interview. Mm-hmm. I felt like so that they asked me to do my lingerie is showing. On purpose, you know. And so they asked me if I would come and be in this college show where they raise scholarship money. Anyway, long story short, everything I did was just, the material was very mediocre, very collegiate, like a takeoff on Gunsmoke, a takeoff on this, a takeoff on that. So I had realized in the interim that I did stuff in conversation. I would essence something down, just, I don't know how, but, and so I did a Grosse Pointe matron. Grosse Pointe was a very rich suburb of Detroit, where the Fords lived and other wealthy people. And it just happened that my mother's maiden name is Ford.
Right. And
so my mother would just be enraptured with the society page in the New York and the Detroit Free Press or the Detroit News. So I was conscious of that all the time, although we were very blue collar. And I lived in an ethnically mixed neighborhood. I was very hip and very streetwise. And so I did a takeoff on the Grosse Pointe matron, and her daughter, Charlotte, was just about my age at that time. And she was making a debut party that reputedly cost $5 million, like $20 million in more current terms. And we never had a car. I borrowed a car with the driver's side tied on with a rope. And I drove my mother because she just had to see the preparations for the debut party. And they had all the canopies and the twinkle lights and all that. And then come up to electronics and like really jazzy stuff. And so my mother was just thrilled beyond description to go around the estate. Oh, I've taken so long to tell this, but so years later, I did I'll just let it show. What difference does it make? I'll button this up. So
as long as you're comfortable.
If my mother was alive, she would be pointed out right away. So later, I was very good friends with Kathy King, who became Ford's third wife. She was a cheerleader. I got her on the cheer team at Cass Tech. And she called my mother and she said, Mrs. Tomlin, you can come in the front door now. Did you get that story? Did you get it? Because she was married to Ford. She was married to Henry Ford now. She's died recently, very sadly, I'm sorry to say. And so she said, and there were Chagalls on the walls and everything, and all the cheerleaders were there having a good time. And she called my mother and said, Mrs. Tomlin, you can come in the front door now rather than drive around the estate. Oh. Wasn't that hard to get? Some of you watching out there, make a chat note and say you understood that.
It's like a big little town growing up in Detroit. One of the things that I and other people admire about your relationship, Lily and Jane, is that it seems like society is catching up with you. I think you've been trailblazing in so many ways, and for LGBT people, looking for examples or looking for people who've come before. I think you're just a shining example of a couple that's made it work professionally and personally. And I guess I'm kind of curious what advice you might have for people who are young people who are starting out. If you have any advice that you would give, given your successful career.
Oh gosh, I have no
I think you
advice.
should listen to me more.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen to Jane.
I agree. But you're so far ahead that I can't even catch up to you.
I think we were really lucky to get together because she gave me a lot of confidence. I've said this before. After I did something for CBS, and it got a Peabody, but I still didn't know where to go after that. And when I met Lily after that show, somehow you had a lot of confidence in my writing. You know?
Well, I did. Well, the Peabody people did too.
Well, but
Jane is absolutely beautiful. It's incredible to see today, and I think the emotional heart that's in that piece just runs through so much of your writing. And
you're
absolutely
knowledgeable than we are about it. You're so knowledgeable about all this.
He's a good
study up. We have a question coming in from the audience, so let's see we can answer it. This is for Lily. I'm going to go ahead and repeat it. So for Lily, what have you learned about yourself from watching this film, and what in your life in general over the past decade? So what have you learned from rewatching this documentary and life in general?
Well, I learned in watching the film that I have a short fuse, and I was embarrassed by that. And Jane always makes peace. She just makes things okay. She, if you watch those scenes of us together, she's just so much more intelligent and cheerful and wholesome.
Well, we knew the camera was on us. So.
Well, I guess Jane seemed interested. Like, what did you learn in rewatching this years later? Did you learn kind of something?
No, it was later that I learned it.
That you were great.
So fanatical about the work. I just I thought that when I used to go to Second City in New York, when they had a Second City there, and Alan Arkin was there, and Zora Lampert, and Barbara Harris had just left, and I was just mad for them. They were so wonderfully gifted, and I would just be so fed up with the audience. They'd be like kids on a date, on Friday or Saturday night, and they would talk and they would chatter and they would be smoking and doing stuff, and I would just be enraged that this audience was allowed to see them. They didn't appreciate them. They weren't there for them. And that carried over into my career somewhat. I can remember playing in like the Fairmont. I played the Fairmont chain many times. And I would, and the audience there would be, business people, and they're like doing stuff, whatever they're doing, and they're not paying attention, or they're not really interested or excited, and it would show in my performance. It would flare up.
You'd sometimes stare at the audience and intimidate them.
I did. I mean, it was just, I don't know how I've honestly, on reflection, I don't know how I've ever had a career.
Well,
Jane, there's a beautiful moment in the documentary where you talk about the importance of Trudy the bag lady and her monologue, where she's talking about the kind of the visitors from elsewhere, the really intelligent life, and there's a moment that you thought was really important to keep in, which was about the interconnectedness of everyone. And I think we talked a little bit about it before, but I was hoping we could get a little more about what you thought about the sort of interconnectedness of life and what you were saying with the piece.
I think we are interconnected, although this country doesn't seem to be connected at all. We're interconnected, but we're not connected, I think. But I feel like, who was it? Some philosopher said that, I think Emerson said there's one mind. And we're like all of that. We make up all of that. That's like the universal thing that Jung believed in too. But I was at that point, I thought I could just do anything with Trudy, that she was, she could know physics. She could know, I actually was going to use the uncertainty principle as a metaphor. And I got so busy writing and everything that the metaphor went away. When we don't even know what the metaphor was anymore. The idea that
we forgot to put it in the program.
Yeah, I forgot to put it in the play, more importantly. But it was so funny, but it actually was an inspiration that I was reading some physics and probably didn't understand that much, and I'm sure that physicists just loathe people who grab onto their theories in such a light, kind of a way and not have the full profound knowledge of it. But after all, I was doing everything through Trudy, so you could make allowances for that.
Well, I have to disagree with you a bit because I don't.
That's the way we work.
Right.
You just have an example.
Technical process.
I think you understand it a lot more than you let on. And the principle she was talking about was, that the whatever is it has to do with the viewer and the observer and the observed.
By observing, you change what you've just observed, and so there's
and you change yourself.
Yeah, and so I was thinking of the audience as kind of self. I think I was kind of like full of myself when I thought that the idea that the audience would be watching, and because of the uncertainty principle,
they're the ones who are changed, because the audience, even if for a second, they're changed for the briefest of time or a longer time, depending on their own consciousness or what they're able to observe about themselves. But they are changed, and that at the end of the play, because the whole audience, and I remember your mother herself, Joan. Came to see the play one night, and I don't know who told me this story. I don't know if you told it to me or he told it to me. But May was sitting in the audience, and she was she very much appreciated the play. I understood, and of course I always twist everything around so it comes out that way. But
she was in tears.
In the theater, yes, and somebody behind her said to his seatmate, "What are you crying about?" or something like that. And May said, "What do you think? What do you think that she's crying about? The same thing I'm crying about." I mean, at the end of the play is so moving if it's well done and well received, that the audience is moved in general.
Another thing that I've noticed across your work is that you focus on the very small. So, whether through Edith Ann or through the set design, there's this interesting theme about looking at things on a small scale. And I was curious if you wanted to talk about that.
I hope you do.
You have big set pieces like the giant BLT, or when you're in the big rocking chair, or the Incredible Shrinking Woman, which is about becoming small.
Well, I did have a kind of fixation with large things when I was young, quite young. I don't remember how young, but I've never thought of it as an undue fixation.
No.
An idea would come up.
Right.
I don't know why I did it, but I was more inclined to.
First thing we worked one together really was the Edith Ann album.
Yeah.
And it was really, I was ecstatic.
And it was
during
filled
that time.
with, you know, sound. Jane was very big on sound effects, as exemplified in the play. We had 600 sound cues in that
And
play.
we had about 600 sound engineers that we were pushing the technology, and you know, it wasn't really there that easily. It's amazing what can be done now.
It comes across in the when you're testing the works and going around. It's like I was watching this and I doubted myself. I was like, well, no, they're professionals, but they are in sync with Lily's performance. It's really beautiful. So I think it's worth recognizing your sound design as well in that. So
I think Mike Nichols said, well, you know, it's like, why haven't we used sound like that before? You know, and I don't know why they don't use sound. Because
it's so wonderful to, you know, pick up an object that's not there, and like an atomizer or something, and you spray it on yourself. It's sort of magical. Taking the tissues out of the box, on the water bed, you know. And we made a lot of those sounds when we were on the road. In fact, did we have anything in the movie about that? Like in the John, we're making the zippers in the John for the.
Yeah, I think.
So whenever we'd stop in a city, whenever we'd be, you know, laying over in a city for a week or two, we would, in the day, we'd go out and try to make sound effects.
So it just kind of beautifully snowballed, but I absolutely love it.
You're making me want to do the play again.
We have another question. This is from Arshad. He writes, as a 10-year-old living in Pakistan, 9 to 5 was my favorite film.
Oh my God.
And I watched all your other films too. So did you have any idea how you moved people globally whose first language isn't even English? Comedy and art transcends culture.
No, I'm very, very excited to hear that. In Pakistan. That seems kind of exciting.
That's a beautiful sentiment, and it's a testament to how much reach.
Well, I have heard people tell me that you know, Anastasia, the woman who owns the eyebrow place and has a big line of cosmetics. I used to go to her years ago, and she told me that she and her daughter learned English from big business.
Oh.
Oh my God! I never talked with her, but it's she was a businesswoman.
She speaks very well.
Well, at one point you lost my eyebrows, and you never.
That's why
I always blamed that.
That's why I don't go to Anastasia. I'm embarrassed that I don't have enough eyebrows to present to her.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for.
Well, I feel like Jane. I feel like Joan has been cut out of the conversation.
Yeah, Joan, please.
That's just fine.
Are you sure? I was going to ask you a little bit more. Do you have any idea of where else the film will be playing, or future plans?
I'm not sure.
Joan.
We're hoping to get it on a streamer.
Okay. And Lily and Jane, do you have any parting thoughts, especially since we've been at home? Hopefully you've been staying busy and staying sane. Do you have any parting thoughts for our audience?
Well, I'm glad there was an audience.
Well, you can always hope for, but I think
I'm very impressed with your questions and how knowledgeable you are. And are you a columnist?
Oh no, God no. I work with the festival, and I work with Outfest and UCLA to preserve LGBT cinema. So I had to do a little homework, and it was honestly a pleasure to get to watch your work being interpreted by Lily over the years. So I just wanted to thank you all for making this film especially available for us and our audiences. So.
Thank you. Thank you. So did the audience here tonight see the film?
Sorry, what was that?
Did the audience that wrote to us tonight, did they see the film?
I'm hoping so. It is still available. It's going to be on our platform for another 24 hours. So if they want to catch it, they can go to outfest.org and learn how to access the film. There's still passes available if they want to watch it. So
maybe he needs to know about celluloid closet.
Well, they know about celluloid closet.
You know that?
I was going to ask you about it because I love your voiceover in the film, and I wish we had more time to talk about it.
The premiere of Celluloid Closet. I can't remember, but it's been many years. This is Outfest.
Yeah. Where are they? Where's the audience?
Oh, we're here in Los Angeles.
The audience,
It's virtual.
you've been to Outfest. This is just a Zoom.
I know.
Well, we'd love to, when it's safe, we'd love to, if you are interested in presenting Celluloid Closet, or hopefully one day again, the documentary about the making of the film or of the show, we'd love to have you present it in person someday if that's possible. But
Okay.
until then,
Joan did a wonderful thing, and we didn't give her that much access at that point. We just didn't know how much work it was to do a documentary. I wish we had that to do over, Joan, because I don't think we gave you what you needed, but you still made something out of it that we like.
Thank you. I think you did.
It's we're very grateful to have that look at your career, and Joan, for everything you did in terms of the filmmaking and making it accessible once again. So if there's anyone special you wanted to thank to bring it back, I just wanted to give a shout out to Lauren Chaffee for helping us connect to you, Joan, and ultimately to Lily and Jane, and to
You
Trevor.
think Dorado would want at the center?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if they're set up. They probably could screen something.
We could talk to Joan about it later.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you as well.
Thank you.
We're lucky to have you.
Thank you, Brendan.
Of course, it was our pleasure. And just a reminder that the film is streaming on the Outfest Now platform until Wednesday night. So you have until midnight tomorrow. And there's still passes available for the festival. Just go to outfest.org to see the full festival lineup and learn about how you can access our incredible program of films online, as well as to the Outfest Now app, which is available on Apple TV, Android TV, and Fire TV. So thank you once again to Jane Wagner, LILY Tomlin, and Joan Churchill for your incredible body of work.
Thank you.
For being so daring and making a path for those of us who came after. So, and thanks once again for joining us here tonight.